What could happen with Dylan Raiola as his recruitment feels like is still going on? He took a visit to Nebraska this past weekend. He's currently committed to the University of Georgia. So what I feel like is a helpful exercise for us to do right now is kind of walk through both scenarios just so we're prepared. If he ends up staying committed to Georgia, what does that mean? How do we feel? What does that mean for Georgia? If he commits to Nebraska, so he flips his commitment, like there's a lot of smoke right now for him doing, and flips to Lincoln, what does that mean for Nebraska? We'll talk about all that right now, but first things first, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Listen, college football doesn't stop. We are pushing towards 200K subs. We have right around 70% of our audience that is not yet subscribed. You're already watching, so go ahead and double check that you've hit that subscribe button so we can throttle on through and hit that 200K number. We appreciate y'all in advance for being a part of this, genuinely. So let's start with this now. Let's say all things stay the same and he stays committed to Georgia. Now, you go check out Rusty Mansell's work over at Dogs HQ. There's a ton of great intel and notes about just everything Georgia, including Dylan Raiola. Right now, it sounds like there's still communication between Dylan Raiola and some commitments at Georgia, at least. What I think we got to make sure we talk about here is Dylan Raiola staying committed to Georgia. That would be big. Like, you can't convince me otherwise that a five-star quarterback signing with your football team isn't a big deal. A lot of people are going to say, well, JD, what about the strain on the fan base and the rest of the recruits and his class in the locker room? Like, are we really going to be talking about that when Dylan Raiola throws his first touchdown pass in a Georgia uniform? Are we really going to be saying, well, he almost slipped to Nebraska? Well, there was all that drama close to signing day when they win an SEC title and he's playing quarterback for you? I don't think so. So I understand the thought behind, well, is there already some damage done there? Listen, I'm just telling you, if we can't get past this, or we don't think we can get past this as a fan base, what are we talking about here? Dylan Raiola, if he does stay committed to Georgia, that is a massive get. A five-star quarterback, a quarterback of his caliber, doesn't come around every now and then. So that's a big deal. Want to make sure we say that. A lot of people also saying, well, hey, there's all this smoke around him not wanting to go to Georgia. Heck, we don't want him anymore. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. He's a five-star quarterback. You want him because he helps you achieve your ultimate goal of winning football games, winning the SEC, and winning national titles. So let me be very clear. He can help you accomplish that goal. So this whole thought that people don't want Dylan Raiola at Georgia just because there's smoke around him, maybe going to Nebraska, I promise you, that's not actually how you feel. That's a defense mechanism. It's fair. I understand it. But I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Dylan Raiola going to Georgia would still be massive. Even with all the talent they have on that roster, that would still be a massive acquisition to land a five-star quarterback like he is. So let's say that he commits to Georgia, and at the very best, he is exactly what you hope he is. A guy that is a first-round caliber kind of player, continues to lead your offense in the direction that it's going right now, continue to have this vertical passing attack downfield, and great things happen at Georgia while he's the quarterback. Let's say that happens. That's the best case. What's the worst case if he commits to Georgia? For all the folks saying we don't really want Dylan Raiola, I don't think that's really how you feel, but let's just walk that through. Worst case, he commits to your football team and ends up not being what you thought he was, and the talent that he brings to that room elevates everybody's level of play. Regardless of what he does when he gets to Georgia, adding someone that's as talented as he is elevates everybody else in that quarterback room. I promise you. That's just the way of the world. So that's the whole thing with Georgia. Now, let's say he commits he decommits and flips his commitment to Nebraska. If he flips and goes to Nebraska, this changes the way that you talk about the next two seasons in Lincoln. Just by nature of what you were talking about before. Hey, can we get to a bowl game? Can we get past that 6-win mark? You go from talking about that to, well, can we win the conference? Right or wrong, adding a player of his caliber, of his profile, five-star kind of guy, when you've had mostly three-star kind of guys in that roster, it changes what you talk about. And that's the nature of having a guy like him on your roster. It changes the kind of ceiling, the kind of hope you can have going into a season because you have a quarterback at the five-star level. If you got a quarterback, you got a chance. Gives you a different kind of chance when you add a guy like him. For 2024, there'd be real optimism. Because in 2023, averaged 18 points a game. And Dylan Raiola is only a true freshman. He would obviously take some time to get acclimated to the college level. You would have to imagine if we're using common sense there. But you're saying, okay, Lost 5 games by 1 score. We scored 18 points a game. Gave it away about as much as anybody else in the country. We had a 5-star quarterback to that operation. You telling me we can't be a little bit better? I understand the optimism. I'm just saying that would be the impact if you add someone like him. Also, it would add more fuel to the Matt Rule campaign in Lincoln. It would add more juice to that approval rating he already has, because if you go 5-7, land a 5-star quarterback, my first thought if I'm a fan of Nebraska is, okay, well, what happens when we start winning? We're landing 5-star quarterbacks after not even making a bowl game. What happens if we actually start winning some real football games around here and start competing for, I don't know, conference titles? Like I said, you can now talk about if you land a guy like Dylan Raiola, that's the kind of juice it would give. And it would give a very strong trajectory. The arrow would be pointing very much so up if you were to land a guy like him. So those are kind of the two situations that could happen. But let's kind of talk about the impact on either side of this thing. If Georgia doesn't land Dylan Raiola, like I said, it's a loss. There's no way around it. You don't land a 5-star quarterback when you haven't committed. That's a loss. But I would also say if you're Georgia, you won a national championship with a walk-on quarterback. Now, that walk-on quarterback ended up being Stetson Bennett, who elevated his play significantly the next season. But you also have 2 other elite quarterbacks in your room, in Ryan Puglisi and Gunnar Stockton. I'm not even counting Carson Beck, and he could potentially come back. You also, at the time of us recording this, have the #1 class in America. You also have the best coach in college football on your sideline in Kirby Smart, who's got 2 national titles to back up that statement I just made. It'd be a bummer to lose Dylan Raiola. Do not get it twisted. But again, the way that it would feel to me is like you're going to the party, you're excited to be there, it's going to be a good time. Last second, your best friend calls and says, hey, I'm not going to be there. He had already RSVP'd. You had every intention of him showing up with you to this party. Disappointed. But you understand, after you get over that disappointment, party's still going to be a lot of fun. Still, a lot of your other friends are going to be there. You're still going to have a good time. That's kind of the way that it would feel to me if I'm Georgia. Now, for Nebraska, let me make this very clear. This would feel like their 6th 1-score loss of 2023. Because at first there was Dylan Raiola is committed to Georgia. Okay, hey, we were right in the mix. That's too bad. That's a bummer. And you kind of recover from that heartbreak. You learn to live without the Dylan Raiola expectation in your life as a Nebraska fan. But now we're back here. We're very close to signing day right now. And we're at this point where we are expecting, if we're a Nebraska fan, to watch that phone blow up here any second and say, oh, he just flipped. That's what you're expecting if you're a Nebraska fan, because that's what all the juice is right now. You got people putting in predictions for him to flip to Nebraska, and so there's this expectation now that Dylan Raiola is going to be in Lincoln. So if it doesn't happen now and he sticks to Georgia, again, feels like just that same heartbreak you felt 5 times throughout the course of this season. In Georgia, you kind of got to feel like, all right, they got a lot of talent on that roster, like I just said a second ago. Nebraska, a lot of 3-star guys. And I love it. Like, hey, I was a 2-star guy out of high school, so I'm not even talking down on anybody that was less than a 4-star. I'm just saying, you add a guy like him, and the kind of hope and the kind of excitement he would bring would be massive. So regardless, he means more to the roster at Nebraska than he would at a place like Georgia, just by nature of the impact, by nature of what they have in-house. I'm not saying that the roster at Nebraska can't still make bowl games and do good things. I'm just saying you add a guy like him to the equation, and the way you talk about the future is very different than how you would talk about it without a 5-star quarterback in the lineup for you. So either way, he means a lot to both sides. I want to make sure that's very clear. Not landing a 5-star quarterback if you're Georgia, that is massive. Can't convince me in any way that that's not still important. But we'll keep an eye on this. That's kind of the way that we see this whole thing shaking out. If I had to give a feel on this today, I still feel like where there's smoke, there's fire. All the buzz around Nebraska, to me, feels like that's the way this thing is leaning. But again, we'll see how this thing plays out. I'm not coming to you with a ton of insider information, just kind of giving you my feel in the situation. And we will see what happens here as we charge headfirst towards National Signing Day. Keep it locked right here. Make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at JD Piquel. Let me know how you feel about this thing with Dylan Raiola. Where you think he's going to go. Appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.